over to you.
Okay, so hi everyone. This is Maya Fouad, co-founder of the Scrum Club with NG Abu Hamila. We also have NG here. So Egypt Scrum Club is one of Scrum Alliance user groups. And I'm happy, guys, that this is our anniversary, actually. We had our first meetup in September 15th, 2019. And here we go. We are doing these nice gatherings with everyone. And I'm happy that today we have Femi and Pamela. I would like to welcome them. And in order not to take so long time, I will leave the floor to Femi to take us through this nice session of the culture and transformation. So,
Maya,
yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Maya. And once again, good evening and welcome everyone. Great appreciation from us to Egypt Scrum Club for this opportunity that we've got to share knowledge and share experience with this audience. Facilitated by Maya, we're in good hands. Now, our objective this evening is to make this evening one of a new experience, but fun, learning, collaboration. So please stay with us, and we're going to take you through some wonders of the world. And obviously, we know that the Pyramid of Egypt is one of the 7 wonders of this world. So there's a lot more to come. So what we want to do to start with, just to get to know one another and to have a little bit of dialogue at the beginning, we want to have an icebreaker. Okay, is everyone comfortable or familiar with icebreakers? You can shout out.
Sorry, Femi, for disturbing. I might be dropping off due to some unplanned circumstances. So I will be leaving my personal mail to receive the recorded session. I will be more than pleased to watch it later. Hopefully I would have a chance to attend such a lovely translation session. I'll try to make it later, inshallah. It was really a pleasure to meet all of you guys.
Thank you.
I'm quite sure we will make it once again, inshallah.
Thank you very much. Not a problem.
Anyways, I will be dropping my personal mail in order to share the recorded session very soon.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
So here's what we want to do for our icebreaker. And it's a very simple question. What is culture? But this time we want to look at it from a holistic global perspective. What is culture? Please feel free to use the chat function to share your thoughts and just kind of give us an indication of what, from your perspective, culture means to yourselves. So, beginning to have some responses. People's way of life. Hello from Scotland, Scottish culture. Identity. Stories we tell each other. Way of life again. Let's keep it coming. The stories we tell about how we work together. Community of ideas. Characters. Traditions. That's lovely. Okay, let's keep it coming. And let me take us through what we've got here. So, culture is the totality of a people's way of life. The characteristics and knowledge of a particular group of people, which include language, religion, cuisine, social habits, norms, mores, music, arts, So what we're saying here is it can be seen as the growth of a group identity fostered by social patterns unique to that group. Culture is an umbrella term which encompasses the social behavior and the norms that are found in human societies, as well as the knowledge, the beliefs, the arts, laws, customs, the capabilities, as well as the habits of individuals in the group. Okay, so moving on, we thought it would be a good idea just to visualize this. So we got a group of people, in this case, Egypt. You've got multinational identities, language, culture in a word cloud. You've got faith, multiple faiths, cuisine, we mentioned earlier, lovely dishes. And then we've got wordplay, belief, society, behaviors. And finally, you've got music. So culture means different things to different people, wherever they are, wherever they believe in, whoever they are, and what identity they portray. So how many cultures are there in the world, out of curiosity? 5, 10? Thoughts? Infinity, thank you. It's countless, it's a lot. It's just without any boundaries. So as we go through this journey to this evening, please have an open mind and bear in mind that it's all about culture. Okay, so let's start off with an introduction. This is myself. I'm an Agile coach in the UK. I've successfully delivered a number of digital transformation programs in a wide variety of sectors across the globe. I have quite a number of years of experience working in finance and IT, as well as business agility. I'm an Agile practitioner. I'm not a purist. So I'm a certified Scrum Alliance team coach. I'm a Scrum at Scale practitioner. I hold a number of accreditations with the IC Agile, and I'm also a SAFE program consultant, as well as a SAFE trainer. And finally, I'm a member of the International Coaching Federation. So I'm pleased to be here with you. Next, we have Pamela Ayodele. She is an Agile coach who's currently engaged on a large Agile transformation. She refers to herself as an Agile nomad. Now, nomad is a cultural trait. So as we step through the journey, we'll be seeing quite a lot about culture. She's worked as an IT project manager for several years, but has some extreme restlessness and inquisitiveness, which led her down the Agile path and the possibilities that offers. Pamela has expanded her learning journey with industry standard qualifications, which include Scrum Alliance, Scrum Master certification, IC Agile certified coaching, and like myself, Pamela is an SPC and a SAFE trainer. And I can see a few other SPCs here with us this evening. In actual fact, quite a lot. Okay, so Pamela, thank you. Next, I'm going to take a moment to acknowledge Gemma Honor. Now, Gemma works as an Agile coach on a large Agile transformation. She's a certified Agile coach. And guess what? She's a professional doodler. She brings together visual thinking and Agile knowledge, and she uses her skills to create sketch notes and graphic recordings to enhance understanding and make messages easier to consume and share. Gemma can be found on LinkedIn. But hey, this is a shameless plug. You can hire Gemma for graphic recording skills for your events. She actually does bespoke vision facilitation templates, and she uses visual learning thinking for demonstrating agility, and she brings her skill sets through some magical touches. So everybody, please welcome Chairman. So let's now move on to the topic of conversation today, culture and transformation. And I'm going to start off by just sharing a little bit about the Agile mindset. It's important to understand that Agile is a mindset. Agile is not a process. And contrary to what a lot of people think, they refer to it as a methodology, but in reality, it's not a methodology. Agile is defined by 4 values and 12 principles, and these are encapsulated in the Agile Manifesto. Okay, now the Agile Manifesto is manifested. Now we can see words play there, manifesto, manifested. Agile Manifesto is a general set of values and principles, and the practice of Agile is manifested through an unlimited number of practices and different ways of working. So we start off by talking about the mindset. And what kind of mindset is it in Agile? Specifically, we're referring to a growth mindset. A growth mindset is synonymous with an Agile mindset. It's a belief in the ability to learn and adapt. The opposite of a growth mindset is a fixed mindset, which represents the complete opposite. A fixed mindset believes that our abilities are fixed and our potential is limited to the talent we have. So, leaders and practitioners in any field can develop agility and be prepared for the future of business, the future of creative work, customer centricity. Now, in recent years, we've seen marketers, HR managers, finance leaders, product designers, content creators, and believe it or not, sales representatives. They've all started to accept and embrace the discipline and realize the benefit from this Agile mindset and a way of working. Now, some people may not be familiar with the Agile Manifesto. We have 4 values, and there's a whole academic kind of body of knowledge on the Agile Manifesto, the 4 values and the 12 principles. That will not really be the center of our discussion this evening because it will take a lot of time. But simply put, the 4 values of the Agile Manifesto state that they have become too aware of better ways of working, such that individuals and interactions are preferable or take precedence over processes and tools. Working software takes precedence over comprehensive documentation. Customer collaboration takes precedence over contract negotiation. And responding to change takes precedence over following a plan. So as we step through this journey, we're going to begin to appreciate how the Agile mindset focuses on being agile as a foundation for success, and that pivots to doing agile. Agile is not something we do. We are agile first before we start doing agile. The 4 values are the foundation of the mindset, as we mentioned. And lastly, in a world full of competing methodologies and frameworks, these values serve as a common ground for agile practitioners. Okay. If I may kindly ask, please, can all participants kindly mute themselves? if you can kindly, please mute yourself so that we can get traction. Thank you. Now, we've talked about the agile mindset, and we know that there are a number of benefits offered to us. In today's world, which we hear customer centricity quite a lot. And in today's world, we begin to identify emerging challenges and how we embrace these challenges. First and foremost, customer centricity. What does it mean? Now, to achieve customer centricity, the agile mindset acknowledges the need for learning, experimentation, continuous improvement that enables people and their organizations to be more flexible in how they meet a customer's needs. A lot more on that later. Now, customer centricity is achieved mainly through things such as design thinking, whole product thinking, and systems thinking. Then we talk about embracing challenges as learning opportunities. Enterprises can truly surprise, delight, and fulfill the needs of their customers by co-creating, experimenting, adapting, innovating, and being okay with failure along the way. Now, a fixed mindset does not make room for failure. A growth mindset makes allowance and room for failure. It's okay to experiment and fail. Now, we frame agile as a way of thinking, the values and principles as we mentioned. If you approach agile as a process, one result is likely to take place. You will succeed with your process, but that's where you're going to end. Once you've achieved the process optimization, that's it. You've achieved your goal. But if you approach it as a set of cultural habits, your organization's journey of agile transformation can change everything. Now, I emphasize can, because nothing is guaranteed in the world of agile. It's all about suck it and see. So if we move on, the best thing from an agile mindset is that it gives us the ability to blend agile methods and frameworks so that we can meet the emerging needs of our respective organization. So lastly, agility is all about experimenting and learning from our encounters. Now I'm going to move on to the next slide. What is agile? Now, we've just spent a few moments talking about agile being a mindset, and we've mentioned the four principles, sorry, the four values in the Agile Manifesto, pardon me. What we haven't talked about are the Agile principles. There are 12 Agile principles that were crafted from the Agile Manifesto. Unfortunately, time will not permit us to go through those 12 principles, but it's important to bear that in mind. Now, the Agile Manifesto was a game changer in software development at the time it was created in 2001. In the years that have followed, practitioners across all industries and all disciplines have started to realize the importance of an agile mindset. Unlimited practices have started to evolve over the years, okay? Now, please bear in mind when we say unlimited, it's for a reason, and that will become apparent as we go by, okay? Now, two key things. When we approach agile from the mindset perspective, we're beginning to see the evolution of frameworks and practices, and agile becomes part of our day-to-day activities. Now, we mentioned practices earlier on. So in the interest of time, I was going to ask whether people can actually share what they know about agile practices, but there's nothing stopping us from doing that in chat. Share with us practices that you are aware of. Let's make this interactive. But just to get going, Scrum and XP are widely known, but they're not the only agile practices. We have other practices such as test-driven development, TDD. We have things such as BDD. We have DAD. We have so many others. Now, I'm not going to get into some controversy because when we talk about practices and frameworks, there's one that comes to mind, the Scaled Agile Framework. We're not going to get into debates tonight whether Scaled Agile Framework SAFe is agile or not, but let's have an open mind and let's embrace SAFe as one of the frameworks that delivers agility. Okay, now, if you come to Agile from the appropriate mindset and respect the values and the principles, you can pull together any sets of practices that make sense for your organization. In other words, we do not adopt a purist approach to say, this is the only way and this is Agile. I'll be honest and vulnerable to say, in my early days of agility, I used to say, that's not Agile. But now, what works for your organization, what delivers value to your customers, that's Agile. Furthermore, as long as you can continue to inspect and adapt your practices and you learn as you go, that's one of the key points. Just as we get frequent feedback from our products or our teams or our various ceremonies, we also inspect and adapt our agility to make sure it doesn't become stale. Okay, so recently we've begun to see a lot of evolutions of hybrid agile practices. We've heard of Scrumban, which is Scrum and Kanban. We've heard of Scrumathon, which is Scrum and Waterfall. We've heard of Agilefall, which is Agile and Waterfall. We've even heard of Wagile. Yeah, are these all Agile or not? If it works for the organization and they were able to have an Agile mindset, we're cool with that. So let's move on. What are the major contributors towards a successful organizational transformation? And here we're beginning to get into the interesting part of our conversation, our collaboration, and our interaction this evening. We view culture as the outcome of an organization's ecosystem, which includes the leadership, people, strategy, processes, structure. Okay, now, there's a famous author, John Kotter, and he wrote, culture and management paradigms associated with the past technological revolutions have built a legacy of inflexible hierarchies that are unable to adapt to modern challenges. So one of the big questions that we often ask is, how do we make our transition from inflexible hierarchies to a modern adaptable structure? And guess what? Agile allows for the flexible approach. Okay, now culture often refers to how people in the organization behave, the mission, vision, business strategies, product roadmap, and so on. Leadership and how they interact with people in the organization, the technology they adopt, whether they're a startup, traditional, smart, AI, AR, robotics. You cannot take technology out of the equation and think that you have an organizational culture. You also have to factor in the hiring. How and who they hire. Why do they hire them? What do they bring to the equation? And lastly, I will also add that organizations are now even embracing things such as dress code as part of the culture. Now, I'm going to be vulnerable again to say that once upon a time, I dare not go to work without a tie. Nowadays, I only wear a tie if I have to go to a wedding or, a dinner that I have to wear a tuxedo or something like that. So things such as flexible working patterns, they're all absolutely important. And guess what? The world changed as a result of the pandemic. We appreciate and empathize with a lot of societies that have had to go through some form of loss or another. We've all been impacted. But bringing it closer to home, from a work perspective, remote working seems now to be the order of the day. Organizations have had no choice but to embrace working from home. I could tell stories about that, but I'm going to skip because we have a lot of content to cover. So this illustration from Ahmed Sidki, he's one of my mentors, by the way, puts a lot of things in perspective. This is your culture pyramid. And a lot of the elements that are encapsulated within this pyramid we just mentioned, the leadership, strategy, structure, processes, and people. What do you have with this pyramid? Can anyone kindly shout out what stands out to them from this pyramid? I'd like to hear a voice. Anyone?
Leadership.
Leadership. Mm-hmm. What else?
Strategy.
Strategy. What else?
Agile.
People.
Okay. Lots of thoughts, and this shows the diversity of thought in agility. For me, what stands out is alignment. You got a perfect triangle. Everything is in alignment. Okay. So let's move on. So, what I could do is ask people in their own time. We will be sharing the slide deck, by the way, so you will get time to go through it in detail. And the justice that we're not doing this evening due to time constraints, you can spend time on your own and read some of the notes and see what our thought process is. But the important thing to bear in mind from this illustration is that culture is both shaped by and shapes all the elements within the pyramid. Culture is a container that holds all of these elements in balance with each other. Hence alignment. A well-oiled machine and everything is in harmony. But of course, we know that's a perfect world. Okay? An aligned culture is where all the elements in the ecosystem works in harmony. There is no sub-optimization. There is no hierarchy that one supersedes the other. Let's move on. Now we're going to look at a culture-led transformation. Okay? There's some recipes for a successful agile transformation. First and foremost, those driving the change must create an inspiring vision for the transformation. They must inspire the hearts and minds of the people that work in the organization. Now, vision is a clearly articulated, results-oriented picture of a future you intend to create. Vision is a dream with direction. There are some examples of vision in the notes to this presentation. The second step is that those driving the transformation must identify outcomes. They must go deep to understand the desired behavioral change. Now, specifically, we identify output, which is a thing produced and delivered to an audience. Outcome specifically refers to the behavioral change that occurs in a member or members of the audience. So senior leaders must make the most critical decisions, and the decisions are pushed down into the organization, okay, in a centralized decision-making environment. But senior leaders must also empower and encourage decision-making, and that's what decentralization refers to. And within that outcomes context, you've also got impact. So output, outcome, impact. Impact basically refers to the systemic changes that needs to happen in order to realize a vision. Let's hold that thought there because we're going to come back to it later. Okay, so I've just talked about output, outcome, impact. There's a small little diagram there that you can expand on later. The third step, and this is probably the most vital, those driving the transformation must craft a culture transformation roadmap. They must produce a thing and deliver it to their audience. And that thing, that artifact, which you can see here, must elicit how the transformation will happen, when it's going to happen, who does what the critical success factors are. They must also define performance measurements and a whole raft of other things, but we're not going to go into all those details just now. And I'm going to ask everyone to kindly help me out with this next slide. Now, I'd like to hear a voice on this. Looking at this picture, what do you see? Anyone?
Looks like a misalignment.
Hmm.
However, if the picture is rotated a bit to the left, it may be aligned. I'm not sure.
Hmm. Anyone else? Thank you for that, Mr. Fajita.
I agree with Femi as well. It's misaligned, but perception is key. How was the picture taken? So that can misguide. I like the fact that it might be a waterfall project that requirements weren't properly elicited. Okay.
Yes, thank you very much. This picture is actually correctly depicting misalignment. So this is a huge bridge. I wouldn't like to say where in the world this happened, but this was a massive project, huge investment. They started at either end of the river. So company A started left to right, company B started right to left. And of course, the expectation was that they would meet in the middle and the bridge will be joined. But guess what? They're miles apart. Well, they're poles apart. What is the outcome of this project? Anyone, please?
Altered or abandoned.
They cannot fix this.
Yes, they can't.
It's impossible to fix this. It's a huge infrastructure. Hold that thought. What do we see?
this this joint effort on both sides, lack of communication from the start, symptoms of a big bang approach.
So
there was no clarity of vision if we follow the 3 steps.
lack of clarity of vision, outcomes. So left to right, they're building a bridge. Right to left, they dig a tunnel. So at the last minute, you guys are building a tunnel? You guys are building a bridge? Could someone not have asked that question before they even got to the stage of doing anything? This is what happens when there's misalignment. Now, how about this one? So please remember we saw the perfect pyramid earlier on. We saw this earlier. Now we see this. In the interest of time, I'm going to explain what's happening here. When we look at a large sample of organizations trying to adopt Agile, we see that due to their understanding of Agile as a process, the change efforts focus on changing the process element of the organization. Yeah, value chain, policies, operations, business processes, IT. So they change the processes. What we have is we have teams adopting Agile. They introduce more collaborative processes and practices. For instance, they have daily stand-ups. Yeah, we have a daily stand-up every morning. They have group estimation. They have collaborative planning. They have backlog refinement. They have team rooms. You know, they have sprint demos. Yeah, we're doing Agile. However, by changing only the process element of the diagram, they've thrown the organization culture into a state of what? If we remember the bridge and the tunnel, what have we created now? We've created misalignment and unsustainability. This misalignment comes from the fact that now that the processes are pushing more towards Agile, okay, more towards a collaborative culture, but the remaining elements are not moving. So we no longer have a pyramid. What do we have? What's this shape? I don't even think it's got a name. So in this instance, you know, it's common to see that leaders' values and habits haven't changed to be more collaborative, nor have the reward systems changed to encourage the new collaboration process. This misalignment then leads to a lack of sustainability of the change because the culture will eventually push back. Here, will snap back, okay? And they will try to align it back with the rest of the elements making the culture. But guess what's going to happen? Yeah, you now have your culture pyramid looking like this. Processes are shifting more Agile here. You have people, you have strategy, less Agile. You have leadership, off-piste. You have structure, imbalanced. Yeah. Now you can start asking the question, what on earth led us to this state? How will different companies do this differently? What can we do to intentionally invest in specific areas? What are the biggest barriers that's brought this about? What momentum do we have to further towards Agile, to move this way, to the right? Now, can I ask what is likely to happen if this status quo perpetuates? Any thoughts? I see failure. I've just put here anarchy, mayhem, failure. Yeah. If you change one or two of the elements but keep the rest of the same, anarchy can reign, failure can ensue, things go wrong. Okay, now let me move on. In order for us to actually make sure that our transformation succeeds, we've got to embrace an agile mindset. We've got to understand our why, and we've got to make sure that we have those initiating change, not only know what it is they want to change, but why they want to make the change. Okay, so there are two common approaches for transformations. First of all, you have a process-led transformation, which we just saw, and it causes a problem of the organization. The problem is that the organization needs strong change champions with patience and perseverance to make the change succeed. But you always have pushback, you have resistance. The second type of transformation is where you have organization-led transformation, which focuses on changing organizational habits in small organization units. They take it department by department. So in this instance, the organization remains misaligned because the business units feel pressurized to conform with the predominant unit, and then conflicts ensue, and this may result in explosion. Now, both of these result in organizational misalignment, and that misalignment is the main cause for a lot of transformation failures. Okay, now what's the solution? Now, let's quickly look at what my mentor, Ahmed Sidki, illustrated as a process-led transformation. We don't need to go through all the details, but what we can see here is the current state, and this is the target state. Now, in between, in between the transformation stages where you've got misalignment, if it doesn't explode, if by a stroke of perseverance we get through to the end, you get to the transformed state, but in 9 out of 10 cases, it does not work. This is an organizational-led transformation. Again, we can see various stages of misalignment. So let's now look at what happens to have a successful culture-led transformation. We focus on changing organizational structure. We focus on changing habits. We make the changes in small increments. And then the outcome is that all the elements of the ecosystem are in harmony. Business agility thrives. Customers are satisfied. We have increased profitability. We have happy employees. And this is a recommended approach for a culture-led transformation. What's obvious is that throughout the stages of the transformation, your pyramid is intact, you have harmony. Okay, the current state is well aligned, and all the way through to the transformed state, you have harmony. Just 2 more slides for me. Now, this here, you can see the pyramids of Egypt, and you can see how they are well aligned as we see in a culture-led transformation. Now, the outcome of a perfectly culture-led transformation is that culture trumps process change. First of all, leaders need to be relational and not transactional. Respect the people. Secondly, invest in a vivid vision. Thirdly, think outside in, not inside out. Number 4, change culture, not the process. Number 5, pursue learning, not training. Shuhari is a concept that we embrace as part of our agile journey. At shoe stage, you follow directions blindly. At how stage, you understand enough to innovate. At re stage, you create your own forms. You now start your creativity. Number 6, and I highlighted this, it all boils down to behaviors. Be intentional. Number 7, expect no shortcuts. The more you do, the better you get. And I'm just going to close on this final note that when we say that we have to be relational and it's all about our people, we have something called a trust equation that enables us to have trust in our people and trust by our people. And at this point, my wonderful audience this evening, I thank you for listening to me. It's been rushed, it's been long, we've packaged so much into it. I implore you to watch the recording again so you can pause and reflect. And I wonderfully now hand over to Pamela, who's going to take us through to the next stage. Thank you very much. Pamela, apologies for time overrun.
Thank you very much, Femi. Let me just share my screen and I will definitely try not to bore you and make it excessively long. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending this session. Femi has articulated a lot of things that have resonated with me, but one of the highlights for me is always problems that I have seen and I have faced during any form of agile transformation. Femi has spoken a lot about culture-led transformation and has touched on various elements. He's spoken about the agile growth mindset. He's touched on the 4 values and 12 principles. He's also said that culture is the total, way of life, which is really, really true. But also, one of the things I have come to realize and have come to realize very quickly is not only is transformation important, but you also need psychological safety. Without psychological safety, it will be very challenging to change or influence organizational culture. Many of us here are agilists and have worked within Agile for a while now, and we know that it's one area a lot of organizations are really, really poor at implementing, which for me, it's quite interesting because if we expect success, then we should look beyond just processes. So I'm going to take us through a whole idea around psychological safety and implementation of it and why it's really important. So the first question for me is why? This is a very interesting topic for me because lots of people think, oh, it's very touchy-feeling. Why do we need to talk about psychological safety? What is it about? Is it just get in touch with your feelings? But to be very honest, everybody needs a level of safety to function in a workplace. And it's really important also because if you don't feel safe, you would not be able to show up with your best, the best version of you to work. So I have a couple of questions I would like to ask here. So using the chat function, can you just tell me, what do you think psychological safety, just in one word, when you think about the word psychological safety, what comes to mind? What comes to mind when you think about the word psychological safety? And there's no right or wrong answer here. Okay, so I'm going to safe space, trust, afraid to change, no fear, comfort zone, the ability to say no. That is a very interesting one. That is a very interesting one. And another question here for me is, why do you think psychological safety is important? Why do you think it's important to you? Why do you think it's important to have psychological safety within an environment or within your organization or within your team? Being real. Okay. And okay, someone wrote there, the right, be in the right mindset and be productive to be able to embrace change, innovate, and think out of the box. Those are very, very good definitions of why you think you need psychological safety, which is really, really important. And one final question I'm going to ask is, just think about your work environment. Now we're talking about the work environment. Think about a time you did not feel safe enough to speak up, and how did that make you feel? How did that make you feel when you know that, look, you're not able to speak up? Because he spoke about, you know, the recipe for a successful transformation. He talked about vision. He talked about identifying outcomes and craft a culture of transformation. And now, with all that in mind, you know, you are working on a transformation. How did you feel? You know, how did that make you feel? Despondent, frustrated, unproductive, depressed. Those are very, very hard words. Depression. Nobody should go to work feeling depressed. Okay. So you can see why it is really important to have psychological safety. Another question I have is, what is the most important element of any transformation? What do you think is the most important element of any transformation? Humans, people. Yeah, you guys stole my answers. You're correct. The answer is people. You know, and I think organizations do not appreciate the fact that, you know, people are really that important. I think organizations should start to obsess more about people, because you and I make up the organization. Without you or I, the organization will literally be crippled, you know, where the organization is at the mercy of people, because it takes people to be able to carry out a transformation, you know. And it's time, you know, everyone realizes how important we are as individuals. You are important. People are powerful. People are influential. They determine the successes and the outcome, not the tools and processes. Those are just enablers. And I think a lot of transformation focuses a lot on tools and processes, and not enough on people and how people can be the enablers for change. Culture is about how people influence organizational change, how they're able to adapt to change and enable the leaders to look at change from a holistic and robust perspective, which is really, really important. You know, so a very good example to me, what always comes to mind is when I hear about transformations, right? It's almost like a building project that comes to mind. You have new builds and you have refurbishments. And one of the things that are really, really important, no matter what building, whatever project you are embarking on, is the fact that you get all the right tradespeople involved. You know, you get the architects, you get the surveyors, you get the builders, you get the electricians, you get everybody there. But in spite of doing all that, one of the most important elements is health and safety. Health and safety is always involved. No matter how much technicality goes into a building, if there is no health and safety, then, you know, that the organization is liable to be sued. So my thinking is, if you make all that effort to go through getting all the right health and safety in check, why don't we do that in our agile transformations? Why don't we translate that same thought pattern into our agile transformation? So yes, people are really, really important. And I think it's time we start, you know, making psychological safety part of our agile transformation. Now, this picture, this is not me, right? It's a very interesting picture to me because this is a picture of what I want to do and I've never been able to do. I don't like heights. Zip lining is one thing that I have always wanted to do, and it's one thing I am going to challenge myself to do. And this picture to me basically depicts some organizational behaviors and dysfunctions, because you have organizations that are, You have organizations that know they need psychological safety and are willing to get out of the comfort zone to pursue psychological safety. This is another picture. This is a submarine, and I do not like water, and I think this is, for me, my worst nightmare ever. Nothing would make me go into a submarine in the deep of the blue, dark blue sea. There's just so much there that I just don't like. And also, this also refers to organizations that, rather than look at transformations from a holistic perspective, would rather bury the issues in the deep blue sea and are very, very change resistant. And if you have organizations that are change resistant, then psychological safety becomes very, very difficult to exist within that kind of environment. Why do we have agile transformations? And I'll just go through this very quickly because Femi has touched a lot on why we have agile transformations. One is we need to be able to adapt to changes internally and externally. We need to be able to respond rapidly and flexibly to customer demand. And we also need to be able to adapt and lead change in a productive and cost-effective way with no compromise on quality. And one of the big tests of all this for a lot of organizations was during the COVID period. We had some organizations that were not able to survive the period because they were not able to adapt to change quick enough. They were not able to respond to customer demand, and they were not able to do all these things without affecting the quality of their products. Psychological safety. Now, we cannot talk about psychological safety without talking without mentioning Amy Edmondson. She is known as the mother of psychological safety. And she is not a transformation leader. She doesn't work within agile transformation, but she has taken so much time to study psychological safety and its impact within any organization, irrespective of what that organization is, whether it's pharmaceutical, whether it's agile, whatever industry you find yourself in, psychological safety applies to it. So basically, he defines psychological safety as psychological safety is the belief that no one will be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes, and that the team is safe for interpersonal risk-taking. And what does that mean? She said here, anyone, which means irrespective of your gender, your religion, your status, or your position within your organization. For you to have a successful team, your team has to be psychologically safe. Psychological safety is an enabler to good, successful transformations, irrespective of whatever you're trying to transform. It's the gateway to success. If you do not feel safe in a group, you're likely to keep ideas to yourselves. You would definitely avoid taking risks and speaking up. And you might say, oh, all these things happen within my organization. I'm not humiliated. I am not, I can speak up when I make mistakes, or, I would not be punished. But it's all well and good, but also, are you able to take interpersonal risks? Do you just speak up because, oh, you need your voice to be heard, and just because, you see something has gone wrong, you just say it, but you're not able to do anything about it? So for your team to be successful, low psychological safety therefore gets in the way of both teams and performance. It gets in the way of innovation, learning, and personal successes. And you rise as a team and you fall as a team. It takes a lot of work and effort. Leaders need to be a bit more intentional about promoting psychological safety, because it just does not happen. A lot of thought processes has to go into psychological safety and making sure that the organization is psychological safe. I have worked in organizations where every day, was like a battlefield, and it was just a really, really, really toxic environment. And it was hard. And what happened, it was, as a result of that, a lot of good, skilled developers and people started leaving, and that was very endemic of not having psychological safety within that environment. Another person is Timothy R. Clark, that has basically defined psychological safety in a way that really encapsulates what I am trying to express here this evening. Here he says, it's a condition in which the human being feels included. When last did you feel included within your organization or within your team? You feel safe to learn. Are you safe to learn? Are you able to make mistakes and learn from it? You're safe to contribute. Are you able to contribute to whatever it is you're working on, the project within your team? And safe to challenge the status quo. This one I find very interesting, because sometimes you're safe to learn, you're safe to contribute, but are you actually able to challenge the status quo? Are you able to challenge the thinking? Are you able to challenge when leadership is going down the wrong path? Do you feel safe enough and confident enough to be able to do that? This is applicable to every single person, from receptionist to executive. This is not only applicable to IT or large agile transformation. It should be an ongoing organizational culture, irrespective of your position within the organization. So for me, it's more of a mindset shift as opposed to a transformation in terms of structure. And all this will happen all without the fear of being embarrassed, marginalized, or punished in any way. It's really important to understand that there are different levels of psychological safety within an organization. One is inclusion safety. Do you feel safe? Do you feel included? How does your team perceive you? The second one is learner safety. Do you feel safe to learn? Are you able to engage with team members? Are you able to engage with new processes, new procedures, anything that's happening within your organization, within your team? Contributor safety, are you able to contribute? Are you able to actually confidently voice your opinion without the fear of being punished? And finally, you have challenger safety, which is also being able to challenge the status quo. Are you actually able to do that? And this is all really important. I mean, it's all words on a page, but practically, you find out that it's really difficult to actually find everything inclusive within a lot of organizations. And I think it's time we start challenging ourselves and looking at our organizations and the way we are structured and the way we actually look at transformation. We should be looking at it from a people perspective. Yes, it is fantastic to have all the processes and procedures and all the frameworks in place, but also without people, you cannot implement frameworks. You cannot implement changes. You cannot implement, you cannot get the output and the outcome that you really need to be able to move forward as an organization. I think my slide is stuck. Sorry, just give me 1 second, please. Okay, so leadership. We cannot talk about psychological safety without talking about leadership. Leadership plays a pivotal role in promoting and ensuring the presence of psychological safety. It has a direct impact on the success or failure of any transformation within your organization. Psychological safety has to be high on the agenda and at the forefront of the conversations. And it's not just to be left to the agile coaches and team leads and middle management to sort out psychological safety. It has to be empowered by the leaders. Leaders must be willing to empower the teams. High performance teams are not just built overnight. They are as a result of direct impact from leadership. And David Marquette basically defines this fantastically. He has a concept called intent-based leadership. And here he basically explains something that you don't see a lot in a lot of workplaces, but it would be very fantastic to be able to actually see it in a lot of workplaces. It says, imagine a place where everyone engage and contributes their full intellectual capacity. Question here, when was the last time you were fully engaged and you were able to contribute with your full intellectual capacity? A place where people are healthier and happier because they have more control over their work, a place where everyone is a leader. Now, sit down and think about that. When last within your organization did you actually feel like a leader? Are you empowered to feel like a leader? Your organization, does it entrust you with the power to make decisions? And this is where making decisions and empowering really is really important. And David Marquette, you know, I don't know if you know him, he's an author of the book Turn the Ship Around. You know, and there it describes how he began treating his crew members. He was a submarine captain, and he began treating his crew members not as followers, and he basically gave them control and not taking control. You know, and this intent-based leadership, it builds organizations. You know, it helps people to perform at their best. Is your leadership an intentional based leadership style? I think this leadership style should be adopted more across organizations. This happens when people are internally motivated and do not need to be told what to do. They feel high levels of ownership and control so that they engage with their hearts and heads. They are totally sold out to whatever transformation is happening. And with that in mind, it wasn't long before operations took a drastic turn within the Santa Fe, which was the ship and the submarine that he was captain of at that time. And he became, it was one of the worst submarine ships. It became the worst to the first, basically achieving the highest retention record in America for that period of time, which was really fascinating. Now, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. I'm not a big proponent of reinventing the wheel. There are two companies that have actually done a lot of the work on psychological safety for us. One of them is Google. They have a project called Project Aristotle. And basically they have invested the time, the money, the effort, and we can always use them as a point of reference, you know. And Google and Microsoft, they obsess about psychological safety. They take it seriously. And if we look at their track record, they are very innovative. They respond to market demands in a timely manner. They have invested in the well-being of their employees too as well. And they embarked on a 2-year study. And these are the 5 things they came up with when they, at the end of this project. Well, high on the agenda was psychological safety. These are the 5 components they found for high-performing teams. And it's quite interesting, as organization, we always want to have high-performing teams. But one of the big misnomers or mishappenings is that we're not ready to invest the time, the effort, the money, the learning to be able to get our teams to become high-performing. They basically found out that psychological safety was very high on the agenda for Google, both Google and Microsoft. And within those teams, they had dependability. The teams were very dependable. They had very good structure and clarity on their objectives, their purposes, and why they were there. And they understood the meaning and the impact of the work that they were working on. And also, Microsoft as well had the same project called The Art of Teamwork. And they also came to the same conclusion. And this is a very good statement that came out of that particular project. It says, team members who feel safe are better able to take interpersonal risks. This allows them to bring their full self to their work, which in turn sets the stage for innovative ideas to flourish. I mean, Microsoft speaks for itself. They are very innovative. They bring out a lot of products that, you know, we all use today. Psychological safety is really important. And these are some of the key results of having psychological safety within your organization. You have high-performing teams. High-performing teams. Where psychological safety is high, team members work collaboratively. And without having to put your organization on blast, on a scale of 1 to 5, how would you rate psychological safety within your organization or within your team? Just use the chat function. How would you rate psychological safety within your team on a scale of 1 to 5? 2.5. Ooh. 8. Okay, I said on a scale of 1 to
You got 8 there, so that means that they're very, very well safe.
7.
7 as well.
Okay, okay. So, I mean, people are not doing too bad. You know, and there was a research I actually read, you know, research found out that if organizations increase psychological safety, it makes employees more engaged in their work and can lead to a 12% increase in productivity, which is quite good. You know, psychological safety empowers team members. So you are able to take interpersonal risks. You're able to speak out. You're able to challenge the status quo. You don't have to be scared that you will get, you know, sacked or anything like that. Basically, it promotes continual improvement, which is what we're talking about when it comes to cultural-led transformation. So it's not just about the processes. It's not just about the procedures. It's not just about the structures. It's also about being able to invest in people, make them able to engage and be productive, and having the psychological safety where there is no bullying in the workplace, where there is little or no shushing, where no matter where you are, you're actually able to engage with your team. It also improves communication. So wherever there's high psychological safety, there's improved communication, because you know that whatever you say will not be taken out of context, where you would have the developers are talking to the testers, testers are talking to the developers, and all sorts of good communication with stakeholders are happening. And if there's going to be a change, nobody is scared to be able to communicate any changes or any plan deviations. You know, it's really, really important. And there's also increased transparency, because in the diagram that Femi showed with regards to the bridge, I think if there was high psychological safety, I bet to ask if nobody at any point in time thought, there's a problem here. This bridge is not going to be aligned. You know, somebody probably knew somewhere that something was not right, but decided not to say anything because of either they were scared or they thought that, you know, too much money has been invested and we can't stop this project. Or maybe somebody had actually tried to say something and they were shut up or not allowed to express it beyond the team members. It wasn't escalated properly. And for me, that is an indicator of low psychological safety, because organizations should be able to look at their projects and their transformation from a very transparent point of view and actually see what actually is working and what is not working, where this is where the inspect and adapt comes in, and actually make the relevant changes to be able to pivot to a more cultural-led transformation. It's all about people, because without people, you're not able to transform. And if you're not able to transform, then mindset is basically still stagnant and the changes are not happening there. And some of the consequences of psychological safety, some of the consequences can be quite dire sometimes. I mean, we're not talking about small consequences. You can talk about things like, you know, reputational damage. Nobody wants reputational damage. You can talk about product recalls. You know, all these kind of things are really, really not very good for your organization. Some of the consequences, and this is one that really struck me by Timothy R. Clark. It says the absence of psychological safety can bring injury or death. Sorry, the absence of physical safety can bring injury or death, which is very true. So imagine on a building site, you know, somebody is not wearing a harness and the person falls from like maybe the 20th floor onto the ground, you know, it's bloody, it's not good, that can cause death. But the absence of psychological safety can inflict devastating emotional wounds, neutralize performance, paralyze potential, and create an individual sense of self-worth. It can also destroy organizations. Now, let's look at this statement very carefully. You know, physical safety we're very aware of because it's right there in our face. We have fire checks, and we have all the good things that make us physically safe, you know, because obviously nobody wants to die, nobody wants a death in the workplace. But the absence of psychological safety can inflict devastating emotional wounds. Can you imagine going into your workplace every day and you are basically either being bullied or you're not able to work to, you know, your optimum because people don't understand and get you, or you're being made fun of because you don't understand, probably, you know, English is not your first language and you don't understand that. These are things that inflict emotional wounds where you are being judged for who you are, and it can neutralize performance. All these things have mental effects on people. And I think we're getting better at addressing a lot of the mental issues that are mental challenges people are having within the workplace now. I think COVID has actually brought that to the forefront, and organizations are paying more attention. Could they do better? Yes, but it's starting. It could neutralize performance. It could paralyze potential. So I strongly believe that nobody comes to work with the intention of doing a bad job, but there's so many issues and so many blockers in place and impediments in place, starting from just the very structure of the organizational structure, or even the way recruitment is being done, that can actually paralyze potential. Things like, you know, performance is everything, because if a team is not performing, therefore you are not meeting your customer demand. So therefore you're not able to respond to these market changes. And if that is not happening, you know, psychological safety is really, really low, because that is part of what Timothy R. Clark has basically described here. You know, it basically can affect your sense of self-worth. It can also destroy your organization. Organizations have been destroyed, reputations have been damaged because there was low psychological safety. People were not able to speak up when they were meant to speak up. People were not able to talk freely. People were not able to correct situations before the disaster happened. So you can imagine product recalls, and sometimes it may actually cause death, especially with problems when it comes to like compliance and regulation, when you're not adhering to them, and has to do with like some pharmaceutical drugs and things like that. So it's really, really important that leaders begin to look at psychological safety, because sometimes the consequences can really be very dire, and sometimes not even as dire as death, but also you begin to look at high people leaving the jobs, which is consequential as well and would impact your ability to be able to deliver. And it's always good to be able to measure psychological safety. So one of the ways I find to have a quick, you know, look into how my team is doing in terms of psychological safety is data collection. Data is really, really important. Just a simple survey. It's important to diagnose your people problem. This means collecting objective data about people within your organization, because they would provide valuable insights. It would show you what is working, what is not working, and how you can help your employees or your team members to increase their psychological safety. So data collection is very easy. Simple surveys are one of the ways which I do that. Retrospectives also, I mean, every 2 weeks, if you're working within an agile environment, every 2 weeks, as part of the ceremonies, you would have a retrospective. And that is one way to be able to understand the mental state of your team, to understand what their challenges are, to understand what their pet peeves are, to understand what exactly needs to be done to be able to help increase the level of confidence within the team. Here are some of the common indicators of poor psychological safety within an organization. This is not an exhaustive list, but these are some of the common themes I have come to realize and notice within environments where psychological safety is really at the optimum low. One is executive and team leaders seem to dominate the discussion. They don't allow the team members have useful and meaningful discussions about anything, about impediments, about problems, or even about changes that the organization could be going through, or help with bringing a lot of the solutions to the organization. Another one is feedback. Not frequent feedback is given or requested from, because if you don't get feedback, how do you know you're doing the right thing? How do you know you're building the right products? How do you know your team is healthy? How do you know your team is in the right state of mind and have the right tools and everything to be able to deliver? Team members don't ask questions during meetings, which is really, really interesting, because if you're working on a transformation or a project, or you're delivering a product, if you don't ask questions, then how do you know you're on the right track? You need questions. You need to be able to get the requirements right. And if you're not asking these questions, pertinent questions, then I think it's an indication of something not right within the team, because you thrive on questions and an inquisitive mind as a delivery team. Team members don't feel comfortable owning up to mistakes, and there is a big blame culture within your team. So do you feel comfortable owning up to your mistakes without feeling that you would be blamed? Is there a blame culture within your organization or within your team? If things go wrong, are you able to actually put your hand up and say, yes, this is wrong, this is where the mistake is, and are you able to do that? Or do you keep quiet because you know that you're going to be blamed and held responsible for that particular situation? That is not a good indication of a team or an organization that has psychological safety. Are you able to, when you're not able to challenge the status quo, that is a big one, because a lot of times you have management calling meetings, calling all hands and just talking at you, as opposed to talking with you and having conversations, and you're not able to challenge the status quo, despite the fact that you know that probably you're going down the wrong route. And if you're not able to do that, that is an indication that there's poor psychological safety within your organization. And these are some of the impacts of having good psychological safety within your organization or within your team. And I keep saying organization and team because having good psychological safety within your team does not necessarily mean that you have good psychological safety within your organization. Teams are just a subset of the entire organization. And I think leadership should be at the forefront of promoting psychological safety, making sure that people are able to work in an environment where they are safe. Some of the impacts of the presence of psychological safety are things like increased revenue, because if you're psychologically safe, you can become, you're more innovative. You're able to take interpersonal risks. You're able to, there's no blame culture there. So therefore you would have increased revenue because you'd be able to respond to market changes, in a timely manner. Increase in creativity and innovation. This goes without saying, because if there is increase in creativity, Apple is a very good and creative organization and very innovative. And those are the big major players that I'm just mentioning because that's what everybody knows them. But there are also other companies, especially startups and everything, that are very creative and very innovative. Starling Bank in the UK is one of them. They're very creative and very innovative organization. And you can see from just the products which they bring out, you would know that there's a high level of creativity and innovation within that organization. Another one is it builds high performing teams. Everybody's dream and everybody's desire is to have a high performing team. We all talk about the ultimate is to have a high performing team within Agile, but how do you actually build a high performing team if you don't have high psychological safety? The level of psychological safety you have within your team is directly proportionate to how, high performing your team will be. Because if you are not able to perform highly, then you're not able to innovate and you're not able to be creative. So therefore it would affect your revenue. And also you would have very low staff turnover, because when people are safe, people are being, and when it comes to psychological safety, it's all encompassing. You have people leaving less, lower staff turnover. And we all know about the norming, storming, forming stages in team dynamics and everything. And the more people leave, the more disruptive it is within your environment, and that would actually affect your level of delivery. So a low staff turnover is one of the good impacts of having a high psychological safety within your organization. And we cannot talk about psychological safety without talking about leadership. Leadership is really important. They do not exist outside psychological safety. They should be the one championing psychological safety, making sure that organizational changes are happening within a psychologically safe environment. They are the ones that are meant to be at the forefront of it and not leave it to the agile coaches, as I said, or middle management or team members. Everyone, they should be at the forefront of these psychological change championship, which is what I think is really, really important. And I find sometimes it's very interesting when leadership is expecting change, but the change is not happening because they've not created that environment for change to happen and happen in a safe way. Leadership should be invested, very, very invested. They should invest time, invest money, invest effort in making sure that the organization has good psychological safety. They should also be change agent. They should be emulating those behaviors that Femi talks about in terms of psychological safety. They should be at the forefront of it because we're talking about a mind change here, mindset change, thought leadership, culture. They should be all encompassing. They should be leaders. It's not just do as I say, but do as I do as well, because their actions should be speaking louder than their words in the way structure happens, in the way everything happens within the organization. They should also be willing to receive feedback, because how do you make changes without feedback? And who are the best people to give you feedback, if not people that are working on the ground, on the production line, at the forefront of what is happening? And they should be transparent and honest about what is actually happening, because I think transparency breeds trust. And with trust, there's an increase in psychological safety. And also, finally, they should also be able to challenge their biases. They don't know everything. And one of the biggest challenges I find sometimes is you hire very intelligent people to do a piece of work, but yet you want to tell them how to do their jobs. Why did you hire them in the first place? And that always is a question I ask. Why did you hire somebody only for you to tell them how to do their job or how to behave? Why do you want to control the way teams basically behave? And how do you promote psychological safety? Sometimes leaders cannot do this by themselves. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to start from. They don't know how to go about it. So how do you promote psychological safety in your organization? And apart from just talking about psychological safety, there are some practical steps that leadership and organizations can take, or even the teams can take. One is basically you can engage the independent professionals, people that are very good at, specialists at problem solving and helping you to identify areas which the team, your organization is lacking in psychological safety, and help leaders to implement and provide good practices, provide support, and help them on an ongoing basis. They're able to measure the level of psychological safety within the organization, have reviews, have surveys, have whatever it takes. Then also, another way is to build psychological safety into the corporate objectives, which is really important as well, because psychological safety should be at the forefront of the agenda. It should be incorporated into the mission, the vision, the objectives of your organization. It should be part of the OKRs, the objective key results, and it should be cascaded down to every single area of business so that they know and emulate the behaviors that are required for a psychologically safe organization. And also build it into the work practices. We're talking about culture-led transformation. So work practices is culture. You know, the way you behave, the way you act, the way you interact is culture. You know, so this should be part of your work culture. Psychological safety should be part of the work culture within your organization, and also promote it as part of learning and development. Really, really important. And I cannot overemphasize the importance of why we need psychological safety within our organization. Thank you very much. And that is the end of my presentation. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Pamela. Apologies, everyone. We had so much fun. It was thoroughly interesting. Now, the whole idea was to allow time for question and answers. What we've done instead is we've had to be adaptive as true Agile practitioners, and we've resorted to chat. There have been some interesting questions, and I've been doing everything I could to make sure that we provide some responses. I was just about to respond to Tosi. In an environment where psychological safety has not been fostered, what are the practical ways to turn the curve and encourage team members to be more open, especially when they haven't felt as they could before? Excuse me. So Tosi, you still there? I don't know whether the latter part of the presentation from Pamela addressed your question.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
I think it did. Yeah, as soon as I press send, you were kind of going over it. So
Absolutely perfect. Now, thank you so much for having us as your presenters. And a big thank you to Gemma. Gemma, can we just hear your voice very, very quickly?
Hello, it's been absolutely amazing. I've got so much information here. It's coming together as a bit of a picture, but I'm going to do a little bit of work before I send it out, and I will, I'll send it out with the meetup group tagged. So everybody here has got a lovely record of tonight's event.
Fantastic. So I think officially with 3 minutes over. Now, this is the point that we hand over back to yourself, Mai, and you can take us through what's left for the journey this evening. Thank you.
Okay, so I want to thank you so much, Femi, Pamela, for this informative session today. And thank you so much for having Yogama with us. And I would like to thank everyone who has the time to join our session today. That would be great to see you again for more sessions in the future. Thank you so much. Okay,
thank you. So what happens next? Do we finish now, or did people want to ask questions? I'm entirely open, but we just want to honor the time box and make sure that we don't extend it beyond what is necessary.
Okay, so what we can do now, do you have time to receive more questions, or?
Again, in the interest of making sure that we keep to our time box, officially, we have ended the session, but we can still field questions.
Yeah. Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for that. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask them. We might have extra 15 minutes, maybe, if this is possible.
Gemma has to leave because of prior commitments.
Sure.
Thank you so much for your time, Jenna.
Thank you so much, Gemma.
Thank you, Gemma.
Thank you. Thank you, Nick. So we are going to be losing a few people at this point, but if anyone's got a question, we can spend just a relaxed approach now. By the way, we're still recording. The point at which we want to go anything specific that the people feel vulnerable about their psychological safety, we're more than happy to turn the camera off, but or stop recording. But in my perspective, my psychological safety barrier is way up there, in the sense that I'm now able to actually hold conversations in such a way that I don't feel vulnerable, intimidated, or scared. So if there are no questions,
while people, yeah, so maybe while people thinking about some questions, I would like to inform everyone that we will share the link for the recordings in our channels on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Meetup, and our Meetup. This is for you all to have this reference, and you can like watch it later if you would like to.
It sounds to me that we did such a fantastic job that people have taken on board everything we discussed, and it sounds as if all our questions have been answered. So on that note, I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you so much.